right now, at this very moment. 4 astronauts are the closest humans to the moon in 54 years. They are in deep space on one of the most powerful rockets in history. But they find themselves in the middle of a paradox. They will not land on the moon. They will just circle it and come back. Why? Because the $4.1 billion rocket they're riding cannot carry a landing vehicle. This rocket wasn't designed for a mission. It was designed to protect jobs. And the heat shield that will bring them home was riddled with cracks in its only real-world test. Something that should not have happened. But these are just the visible pieces of the puzzle. This situation triggers a deeper question. Is this mission a success or a multi-billion-dollar failure? If you want to know the answer to this technological riddle, then join us. Because when you see what's behind the curtain, you'll be shocked. We begin now. For years, we thought we knew what it meant to go to the moon. It was one of humanity's greatest adventures. We did it in 1969. That moment, Neil Armstrong's boot pressed into lunar dust. This incredible achievement took only 8 years after President Kennedy's famous speech. Only 8 years. The technology we have today is mind-boggling. The smartphone in your pocket has more processing power than all the machines used in the entire Apollo program combined. But here we are, in the year 2026, watching 4 astronauts make a 250,000-mile journey to the moon. Just to take a lap around it, and come straight home without touching the surface. Why? That question is at the very heart of this entire story. And the answer is not simple. The simplest answer is shockingly simple. The most basic reason Artemis II is not landing on the moon is that the lander does not exist yet. Yes, you heard that right. There is no lander. To fully understand this situation, you need to remember the elegance of the Apollo program. Apollo was a single package, everything launched together on top of one giant rocket. The Saturn V, the command module where the crew lived, the service module that provided propulsion, and the lunar module that actually landed on the surface. All in one stack, one rocket, one launch, one mission. If you had a crew and a Saturn V rocket, you could go to the moon and land, period. But Artemis never works like that. Because the Artemis architecture completely separates the crew vehicle from the lander. These two systems must meet in space. The crew travels to the moon in the Orion capsule, launched by the Space Launch System, or SLS rocket. The lander is the human landing system, HLS jets, which is a modified version of SpaceX's Starship rocket. This is like setting out on a long road trip, only to find out that your rental car hasn't even been built at the factory yet. That is why the Artemis II mission has no landing objective. Because there is nothing to land with. But the real question is why? Why were the crew and the lander separated in the first place? The answer lies in the very rocket that is the cornerstone of the Artemis program. The Space Launch System, SLS, was designed as a modern equivalent to Apollo's legendary Saturn V rocket. But there is a critical difference. This difference is hidden in its capacity. The Block 1 version of the SLS currently flying, Jaxai, can send a mass of about 27,000 kilograms into a trans-lunar orbit. And the Saturn V that flew Apollo? It could send about 48,600 kilograms to that same orbit. Almost double. This massive difference explains everything. It's why the Saturn V could carry the crew capsule, the service module, and most importantly, the lunar lander, all in one go. But the SLS cannot do that. The SLS can carry the Orion capsule and its attached European service module. That's it. There is no room for a lander. The rocket's payload capacity is insufficient. This is why the Artemis architecture is inherently split into two launches. Apollo was a single integrated package. Artemis is like an airline ticket, a hotel reservation, and a rental car booked from different companies. And you have to hope they all show up at the right place at the right time. This constraint is baked into the program's DNA, and it creates a domino effect that complicates everything else. This might lead you to think, isn't this overly complicated? Because Yagichi, the SLS, can't carry the lander, and because the chosen lander is the colossal Starship, an engineering nightmare never before attempted emerges. Orbital refueling. Starship is massive. It's about the size of a 15-story building. And to send it to the moon, it must be filled with liquid methane and liquid oxygen while in Earth orbit. What does this mean? It means SpaceX will have to conduct between 10 and 16 separate tanker flights. Each tanker will dock with the HLS in orbit and transfer fuel in zero gravity. This is like building and filling a functional gas station in orbit. But this fuel is not like the gasoline you know. Liquid methane boils at minus 161 degrees Celsius. Liquid oxygen at minus 183 degrees. Keeping these fuels from boiling off for weeks in a vehicle with one side facing plus 150 degree sunlight and the other minus 150 degree deep space is an engineering problem no one has solved on this scale. This is why this process exponentially increases the number of failure points in the mission. Apollo's elegant one-step solution has turned into a fragile chain of dozens of steps in Artemis. So that's the engineering answer. Artemis 2 can't land because the lander isn't ready. The lander isn't ready because the rocket can't carry it in one go. And because the rocket can't carry it, we are dependent on an incredibly complex, risky, and as yet unproven plan for orbital rendezvous and refueling. But this is only the surface of the story. This only answers the how, not the far more important why. Why did we design a system that requires 2 separate rockets, a dozen refueling flights, and an orbital rendezvous around the moon for a job we could handle in one go in 1969? To understand the answer to that question, we need to step away from the engineering blueprints and look at a bill signed into law in 2010. Because the true force that shaped Artemis was not the vision of engineers. Because that force was Congress. And to understand how Congress designs a rocket, and why that design forms the basis of today's problems, you first have to confront its ghost. The name of that ghost was the Constellation Program, announced in 2004 by President George W. Bush. This program was designed to return humans to the moon by 2020. It included a new crew capsule, Orion, a new heavy-lift rocket, Ares 5, and a lunar lander called Altair. But by 2010, the Constellation Program had spent $9 billion, and a review panel under the Obama administration concluded the program was over budget, behind schedule, and highly unlikely to achieve its goals with its current funding. So, President Obama cancelled Constellation in 2010. $9 billion gone. The lunar lander gone. The heavy-lift rocket just chucked gone. The only piece that survived was the Orion capsule. Because it was so far along in development, cancelling it would have been almost as costly as finishing it. This cancellation created a vacuum. But politics abhors a vacuum. This is where politics trumped engineering. Congress was not happy when Constellation was cancelled. But this wasn't because Congress was deeply committed to lunar exploration. It was because Constellation employed tens of thousands of people in multiple states. The solid rocket boosters were built in Utah. The main stage was manufactured in Louisiana. The engines and integration were done in Alabama. These weren't just jobs. These were jobs in the districts of powerful senators and representatives who sat on the committees that controlled NASA's budget. SO Congress did something unusual. They passed the 2010 NASA Authorization Act. And inside that act, they placed a very specific instruction. NASA's next heavy-lift rocket had to use existing space shuttle hardware, infrastructure, and workforce. The shuttle's solid rocket boosters, the shuttle's RS-25 engines, the manufacturing facilities that built shuttle components. All of it had to be used. Congress didn't just tell NASA to build a rocket. Congress told NASA how to build it, not what parts to use, and which factories to keep open. The result was the Space Launch System, or SLS, and the SLS was not designed around a mission. It was designed around a supply chain. Let's put the consequences of that decision into numbers. Because the numbers tell the real story. Each launch of the SLS costs about $4.1 billion. This figure covers the rocket itself, the Orion capsule, and the ground systems, and Saturn V. Adjusted for inflation, each launch of Saturn V cost roughly $1.5 billion. So, we have a rocket that is nearly 3 times more expensive. But this rocket flies less frequently. NASA flew the Saturn V 13 times in 4 years. The SLS can fly roughly only once per year. But, most importantly, it carries significantly less payload. This rocket may be keeping the same factories open and employing the same workforce. But let me tell you what $4.1 billion actually buys. NASA's own Inspector General includes in that figure the production cost of the SLS rocket, the Orion spacecraft, the ground infrastructure at Kennedy Space Center, and the operational costs for a single launch. This does not include the development costs. By the time Artemis II launches, the US will have spent over $90 billion in total on the Artemis program. For comparison, the entire Apollo program cost about $250 billion in today's money. But with that budget, Apollo accomplished 12 crewed missions and 6 moon landings. Artemis has so far produced 1 uncrewed test flight and 1 crewed lunar flyby. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the stated purpose of the law. The 2010 Act was not written to optimize for lunar capability. It was written to preserve the industrial base of the Space Shuttle program. This is the elephant on the launch pad. This is the real reason why Artemis needs 2 separate launches to do what Apollo did in 1. The lander isn't ready. Because the rocket can't carry it. The rocket can't carry it. Because it was designed around leftover shuttle parts, and the shuttle parts were mandated. Because Congress wanted to save jobs, a chain of decisions, each one rational in its own context, collectively produced an architecture optimized for political survival, not lunar capability. This is not corruption. This is not a conspiracy. This is how the American political system processes expensive, long-term technical programs. And Artemis is the product of that process. But how you might be thinking now, okay, the architecture isn't ideal, But why not just overcome it, take more risks, and compress the timeline like Apollo did? The answer to that question involves a change in philosophy as significant as the change in hardware. And it starts with a number that changed everything. And now comes the real shock. This is the number that changed everything. During the Apollo program, NASA estimated the probability of losing a crew at roughly 1 in 10 per mission. 1 in 10. This meant that for every flight to the moon, there was about a 10% chance the astronauts would not come home. And yet, they flew. They went to the moon 12 times. They landed 6 times. 3 astronauts died during a ground test in the Apollo. 1 fire, and 1 crew. Apollo 13 was nearly lost when an oxygen tank in the service module exploded 200,000 miles from Earth. Because the concept of acceptable risk was entirely different then. There was a reason they accepted that risk. That reason was the Cold War. The Soviet Union had beaten the United States to every major milestone in spaceflight. The first satellite, the first man in orbit, the first spacewalk, the first woman in space. Losing the moon was not an abstract embarrassment in the strategic calculation of the 1960s. It was a matter of national security. So, the risk of killing astronauts was weighed against the risk of ceding technological supremacy to the Soviets, and in that framework, a 1 in 10 chance of loss was acceptable. That framework no longer exists. Because 2 disasters forever changed NASA's corporate relationship with risk. The first shock came on January 28, 1986. That day, the Space Shuttle Challenger disintegrated just 73 seconds after launch. An O-ring in the right solid rocket booster had failed in the cold weather. 7 crew members died. Among them was Krista McAuliffe, who would have been the first teacher in space. This should not have happened. Because the subsequent investigation revealed that NASA managers had ignored warnings from engineers about the O-ring's performance at low temperatures. The agency had accepted a risk it should not have, and because of that, 7 people died. This was not an accident. It was the result of a culture where risk had become normalized, a failure of a system that prioritized schedule over safety. After Challenger, NASA was forced to rethink its idea of acceptable risk. But it would take one more disaster for the lesson to be truly learned, one that would be seared into the agency's memory and influence every single bolt on the Artemis program. Exactly 17 years later, on February 1st, 2003, the nightmare repeated. This time, the Space Shuttle Columbia broke apart during atmospheric reentry, and 7 more crew members died. Why? Because during launch, a piece of insulating foam the size of a small suitcase broke off, struck the leading edge of the left wing, and punched a hole in it. During re-entry, superheated plasma at roughly 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit seeped into the wing. The orbiter disintegrated over Texas. Again, this should not have happened. Because the investigation found that NASA's organizational culture had once again normalized risk. Foam strikes were seen as a maintenance issue, not a safety threat. It was an unforgivable mistake. And after Columbia, NASA's relationship with acceptable risk changed fundamentally and irrevocably. The agency implemented new safety frameworks, new oversight boards, and new mandatory risk assessments at every stage. The go-at-all-costs mentality of Apollo was dead. So in its place came a culture of, if we go and something happens, how can we defend it? This new culture directly shapes today's mission. The current Artemis program targets a loss of crew probability of 1 in 30 per mission. This is a target roughly 3 times safer than what Apollo accepted. But some argue it's still not safe enough. In March 2026, just weeks before the Artemis II launch, an independent analysis published by Idlewords put the actual loss of crew probability for this mission somewhere between 1 in 2 and 1 in 50, depending on your assumptions about the heat shield. 1 in 2 in a pessimistic scenario. That's a coin toss. 1 in 50 in an optimistic scenario is still more dangerous than Apollo. The truth is likely somewhere in between. But the honest answer is that no one knows exactly where. Because this spacecraft has never flown with a crew at lunar return velocities before. The most visible symbol of this tension between caution and urgency is the heat shield, and the findings from the uncrewed Artemis I test flight proved this caution was not misplaced. In fact, these findings showed that the ghosts of the past are still with us. Because what happened to the heat shield was something the engineering models did not predict. And it pointed directly to a terrifying conclusion about the reliability of the heat shield. When Orion returned from its uncrewed Artemis I mission in November 2022, its AVCOAT ablative heat shield behaved unexpectedly. This shield was designed to burn away in a controlled manner to protect the capsule from reentry temperatures of about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But the problem wasn't that it burned. The problem was how it burned. Chunks of the ablative material broke off. They call this char liberation and spallation. The material cracked and separated in ways the models did not predict. This should not have happened. Because this kind of uncontrolled material loss could have been catastrophic. An investigation by NASA's own Office of Inspector General identified 3 potential ways this could have killed a crew. First, a direct breach of the thermal protection system. Second, debris from the shield striking the parachute lines. Third, structural damage from uneven heating. This was not just a theoretical risk. This was a real flaw observed on a real test flight. This is what destroyed Columbia, a small piece of damage that was dismissed. And now, a similar unpredictability had appeared in the most critical safety component at the heart of the Artemis program. But NASA's response was even more shocking. The agency did not redesign the heat shield. Because there wasn't enough time or budget. Instead, they changed the reentry trajectory, a shallower angle of approach, a different skip profile to reduce the thermal stress on the material, the same shield, a different angle. And then they put 4 human beings on top of it. This was an incredible gamble. Despite all that new safety culture built to avoid risk after the Challenger and Columbia disasters, NASA decided to fly a system with a known flaw. Because the program could not afford to slow down. A redesign could have set the program back by years. That meant billions of dollars in additional costs. It was politically indefensible. So, they managed the risk not in the hardware, but in the operation. This is like driving slower because your seatbelt is faulty. Maybe it works. But if it doesn't, the consequences are horrifying, and the Artemis II crew would be the first test subjects of this engineering gamble. And as if that weren't enough, the tension within the program grew even more. In January 2026, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman reviewed the analyses, met with engineers and external experts, and gave the green light for the flight. But in February, Isaacman went even further. He cancelled the planned SLS Block 1B and Block 2 upgrades entirely. These upgrades were more powerful versions of the rocket, and he standardized the program on the current Block 1 configuration. The stated reason was risk reduction and program stability. But some read it as an admission that the program simply could not afford to develop more powerful versions of a rocket that already costs $4.1 billion per flight. This shows what the price of a cautious culture looks like. It's not that NASA doesn't want to move fast. The problem is that the memory of Challenger and Columbia, the memory of 14 crew members lost because risk was normalized, has created a culture where every decision is weighed against the question, if it goes wrong, can we defend this? And that question, when applied rigorously enough, slows everything down. This is why Artemis proceeds in steps. Artemis 1 was uncrewed. Artemis 2 is crewed but not landing. And Artemis 3 will be the first landing attempt. Each mission is a gate, and the next one doesn't open until the last one has proven the hardware works. Apollo skipped many of these gates because the geopolitical risks of losing the moon race were judged to be higher than the human risks of losing a crew. This time, we've made a different choice. Whether that's the right choice depends on what happens next, and what is happening now, today, is that 4 astronauts are closer to the moon than any human has been since 1972, in a spacecraft that has never carried humans this far before. Despite all of this, despite the compromises of Congress, the budget politics, the heat shield questions, what they will do for the next 6 days is truly extraordinary. Because Artemis 2 may not be a landing mission, but it is still a journey of a kind no human has experienced in the last 54 years. Let's go with them. But how exactly does this journey work? Behind the political debates and risk analyses, there is the concrete engineering that makes this mission possible. Let's slow down a bit and dive into the technical depths. Because the machine that takes the Artemis 2 crew to the moon is very different from Apollo. Understanding these differences makes it clearer why we could go in 1969, but why we can't go now. When we set aside the political arguments and focus on how these machines work, the story becomes even more fascinating. Let's look at the key architectural differences between Apollo and Artemis. Because these differences are the silent truths that determine the program's fate. It all starts with the launch vehicle itself. First of all, there's the matter of engine power. The cornerstone of Apollo was the Saturn V rocket, designed from scratch by Wernher von Braun and his team. It was a monument to focused engineering. It was built around one single question. What do we need to take 3 people to the moon and bring them back? The answer to that question was immense power. The first stage of the Saturn V produced 7.5 million pounds of thrust from 5 F1 engines. Each one of those engines provided more thrust than all 3 of the Space Shuttle's main engines combined. This rocket could carry the command module, the service module, and the lunar lander together. Now compare that to the SLS. The SLS produces 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff, so more than the Saturn V. That sounds great. But this power comes from a structure inherited from the old shuttle hardware. 2 giant solid rocket boosters and 4 RS-25 liquid-fueled engines. These engines are some of the most tested and reliable ever built. But this design comes at a cost. The SLS is heavier and produces thrust less efficiently than the Saturn V. That's why, despite having more liftoff power, it can carry far less payload to a trans-lunar orbit. While the Saturn V could carry 48,600 kilograms, the SLS can only carry 27,000 kilograms. It's like a car with a more powerful engine, but a much heavier chassis. It makes more noise, it burns more fuel, but it ultimately carries less cargo. This fundamental difference is the root cause of why the Artemis architecture is so complex. The second major technical difference is the mission architecture itself. The elegance of Apollo was in its integration. Everything the mission needed was in a single vehicle. One rocket, one launch, a single stack. If you had a crew, a capsule, and a lander, you loaded them all on top of a Saturn V, pointed it at the sky, and went to the moon. It was profoundly simple. But because the payload capacity of the SLS is limited, the Artemis architecture doesn't have that luxury. That's why NASA had to develop a two-launch system. This adds numerous new complexities and points of failure to the mission. First, Saturn, an uncrewed Starship HLS, will be launched into Earth orbit, where it will wait for a refueling campaign that could take weeks or even months. 10 to 16 tanker flights will fill an orbital depot. That depot will then transfer fuel to the HLS. Only then can the HLS begin its journey to the moon and park in a special lunar orbit called an NRHO. Meanwhile, on a completely separate timeline, the SLS launches Orion with the crew. Orion flies to the moon, enters the NRHO jet, and rendezvous and docks with the Starship HLS. This is a far more complex choreography than Apollo's simple orbital rendezvous. In Apollo, everything was going in the same direction at the same time. In Artemis, two vehicles from two different places have to meet in a perfectly timed rendezvous in the vast emptiness of space. This is a situation that exponentially increases mission risk. The third, and perhaps least understood technical difference is in orbital mechanics. Apollo used a profile known as Lunar Orbit Rendezvous, or LOR. The Saturn V would place the command module and the lunar module together into a low lunar orbit. From there, the lunar module would separate, descend to the surface, complete its mission, relaunch, and redock with the command module in orbit. This was a relatively simple and energy-efficient orbit. But Artemis uses a very different orbit called an NRHO, or Near Rectilinear Halo Orbit. This is a highly elliptical orbit around the moon that swoops close to the lunar surface at its lowest point. So why was this strange and more complex orbit chosen? Because the NRHO is extremely stable. A spacecraft can remain in this orbit for a long time with very little fuel consumption. This makes it an ideal parking spot for a future lunar orbital station that NASA calls the Gateway. But this orbit has a cost. Entering and exiting an NRHO requires more energy and more complex maneuvers than a simple low lunar orbit. This is like parking in a side street via a complex roundabout on the outskirts of the city, instead of just pulling up to a house right off the highway. It might be a safer parking spot, but it's harder to get there. This choice shows that Artemis is not just a landing program, but an attempt to build infrastructure for a more permanent future lunar presence. But this long-term goal makes the short-term landing mission more complex and more risky. When all these technical details come together, a clear picture emerges. Apollo was a fast, elegant, and high-risk tolerant program focused on a single goal. Every engineering decision served the question, how do we land on the moon in the fastest and most direct way? Artemis is a slower, more cautious, and far more complex program. Shaped by multiple political, economic, and institutional constraints, the inherited hardware limitations of the SLS forced a two-launch architecture. This architecture brought a dependency on the Starship HLS and its complex refueling requirements. And the goal of supporting the future Gateway Station led to the selection of the NRHO, which is far more complex than Apollo's simple orbit. None of these decisions are irrational on their own. They all have their own engineering and strategic justifications. But when combined, they create an architecture that explains why Artemis, in 11 or more years, still hasn't achieved what Apollo did in 8. This doesn't mean the engineers are slower or the technology is worse. It means the political and institutional infrastructure that builds the hardware is operating at a fundamentally different tempo than it did in the 1960s. And this slow tempo may be the program's greatest enemy, but let's set politics aside for now. Because the crew of Artemis II is already on its way, and the technical details of their journey show just how incredible an achievement this program is, despite all its challenges. Let us go with them now, to the moment of departure from Earth. And so, we go now to that moment on the evening of April 1st, 2026. The Florida coast is warm. The sky is starting to darken. And on Launch Complex 39B, the SLS stands 212 feet tall under the spotlights. This is the same launchpad complex where the Saturn V lifted off for Apollo, where the space shuttle launched 135 times. It is a place where history is etched in concrete. Inside, in the Orion capsule, 4 astronauts are strapped into their seats. Commander Reed Wiseman, Lodz, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialists Christina Koch and Jeremy Hansen. They have been here for hours. They've gone through the checklists, confirmed the systems, shorts, and listened to the voices from mission control. At 6:35 p.m. Eastern Time, the twin solid rocket boosters ignite. The sound reaches the press site a few seconds later. But it's not an explosion. It's like a deep, knocking, rolling thunder that you feel in your chest. The SLS generates 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. The rocket rises slowly at first, almost reluctantly. But then it accelerates. It clears the tower and begins an arc east over the Atlantic. These first moments are a triumph of raw power. But the real magic begins after they reach Earth orbit. 8 minutes after launch, the core stage shuts down and separates. Orion, while still attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, or ICPS, is in low Earth orbit. They are not going to the moon yet. For about an hour and a half, Orion circles the Earth while the crew and mission control verify the systems. During this time, a critical event happens. The service module's solar array wings deploy. 4 panels unfold and lock into place like the petals of a metallic flower, beginning to draw power from the sun. If these panels don't deploy, the mission is over before it truly begins. But the real turning point is the trans-lunar injection, or TLI maneuver. This is the moment of commitment for the mission. The ICPS fires its single RL-10 engine for about 5 minutes and 50 seconds. In those 6 minutes, Orion accelerates from its orbital velocity of about 28,000 kilometers per hour to an escape velocity of about 39,400 kilometers per hour. This is the speed required to break free from Earth's gravitational bond and coast towards the Moon. The crew feels this as a constant acceleration of about 1.2 Gs. Not crushing, but insistent. And then the engine stops, the ICPS separates, and Orion is on its own. They are now on a path of no return. From this point on, what protects the crew are the laws of physics. Orion is traveling on a path called a free return trajectory. This is a path that will carry them to the Moon, swing them around its far side, and bring them back to Earth using only gravity, like a stone skipping across a pond. The Moon's gravity will catch them and fling them back towards Earth. This is the ultimate backup plan. If everything else fails, if the service module engine dies, if all propulsion systems go silent, this trajectory will still bring them home. It is a safety net coded into the physics of the orbit. But this safety net is a passive one. It doesn't solve problems. It just guarantees that even in the worst-case scenario, you have a ticket home. This is what saved the crew of Apollo 13. So after their service module exploded, they used the lunar module as a lifeboat. And the free return trajectory brought them close enough to Earth to get back. The same basic principle applies to the Artemis II crew. The only thing protecting them is Newton's laws, and those laws will guide them across 250,000 miles of empty space. But technical failures are not the only danger awaiting them on this journey. Deep space itself is a hostile place. This is why an invisible danger awaits the crew beyond Earth's protective magnetic shield. Radiation. Earth's magnetosphere is like a shield that protects us from the bombardment of charged particles from the Sun and the galaxy. Even the International Space Station in low Earth orbit is largely within this shield. But after Orion passes through the Van Allen radiation belts in the first few hours after the TL-I maneuver, it leaves this protection completely behind. The crew is fully exposed to the deep space radiation environment. There are two main threats. The first is galactic cosmic rays, or GCRs. These are high-energy particles accelerated by violent events like supernova explosions in the galaxy. They come from all directions and pass through the walls of the spacecraft as if they weren't there. On a 10-day mission, the cumulative dose from GCRs is modest. But it is not zero, and it is an exposure no human has experienced since 1972. But the real major risk is a solar particle event, or SPE. The Sun erupts and flings billions of tons of magnetized plasma into space. If this eruption is aimed towards the Moon, the crew could be hit by a wave of high-energy protons within minutes. A major SPE that occurred between the Apollo 16 and 17 missions in August 1972 would have produced a potentially lethal dose of radiation for an unprotected astronaut. Orion has a radiation shelter protocol for such an event. The crew moves to the center of the spacecraft, surrounds themselves with water containers and equipment bags, and waits for the storm to pass. This is not a bunker. It is a damage mitigation measure. It's the best they can do with the spacecraft they have. All these technical details, beyond the political debates, show just how dangerous and how extraordinary this journey is. But what's most exciting are the four people standing at the intersection of this technology and these risks. They are not just on a test flight. They are treading a path that humanity has forgotten for half a century. And now, they are heading towards the loneliest, quietest, and most awe-inspiring part of that path. But now we come to the most exciting part: the crew. Because they are not interchangeable figures in pressure suits. They are specific people with specific backgrounds. And understanding who they are changes what this mission means. The tempo picks up now. Because this story is not just about metal and fuel. This story is about 4 people pushing the limits of the human spirit. They are riding on a rocket built by a Congress, on a trajectory determined by physics. And for the next 10 days, that physics is the only thing keeping them safe. Let's meet those 4 people. Let's see who they are, why they are on this mission, and what this journey means to them. Because each of their stories adds a new layer to the epic of Artemis II. This is not just a test flight. This is a moment where history is being rewritten. Here is the commander, Walt Reed Wiseman. He is a Navy test pilot. This is the most fundamental credential you can have in the astronaut world. Test pilots are trained to fly experimental aircraft to their limits and report back with precision about what works and what doesn't. And that's exactly what he's doing. He is flying an experimental spacecraft to its limits, with humans on board for the first time. This is not his first rodeo. Wiseman flew to the International Space Station on a Russian Soyuz capsule in 2014. He spent a full 165 days in orbit. That experience is invaluable. But, more importantly, he served as NASA's chief astronaut from 2020 to 2022. What does this mean? It means he was the person responsible for evaluating whether other astronauts were ready to fly. He decided who was ready to go to space. Now, he is in the seat himself, on the most important test flight NASA has conducted since the shuttle program. This is the ultimate responsibility. The man who sent others to fly is now taking the riskiest seat himself. Because he knows better than anyone that this mission must succeed. This mission isn't just a flight, it's a referendum on the future of the entire program. And Wiseman is the face of that referendum. Here is the pilot, Victor Glover. He is also a Navy test pilot. In November 2020, Glover flew to the ISS on SpaceX's Crew Dragon Resilience capsule. This was the Dragon capsule's first operational crew rotation flight, and Glover was on that historic mission. He spent 167 days on the station. But his role on Artemis II is about much more than personal achievement. Glover is becoming the first black astronaut to fly on a lunar mission. Not the first black astronaut in space. That honor belonged to Guion Bluford in 1983. But Glover will be the first person to go beyond low Earth orbit, the first to see the moon, up close, the first non-white person in history to travel the farthest from Earth. This distinction is important because it doesn't change the physics, but it changes who gets to be part of the story. When you look at the photos of the Apollo program, you see almost exclusively white men in the control rooms and astronaut seats. That was a reflection of that era. Artemis is a reflection of a different era. Glover's presence is a powerful symbol that space exploration is no longer the privilege of just one group. If this is humanity's next giant leap, then it should reflect all of humanity. Glover is the living proof of that reflection. Here is Mission Specialist 1, Christina Koch. She is an electrical engineer. She spent years building space instruments before becoming an astronaut. In March 2019, Koch launched to the ISS, and she didn't come home until February 2020. A full 328 consecutive days in space. This is the record for the longest single spaceflight ever made by a woman. It is an incredible test of endurance, and in October 2019, she and fellow astronaut Jessica Meir conducted the first all-female spacewalk in history. She knows what it means to live in a tin can, out in the void, for the better part of a year. Her long-duration experience is directly relevant to validating Orion's life support systems, because she feels in her bones when a spacecraft's environmental systems are working and when they are not. This is something you can't learn in simulators. It is an intuition gained only by living there. In that silence, for weeks, for months, Koch is not just an engineer. She is a living sensor for Orion, and her presence is vital to understanding whether this experimental vehicle can keep a crew safe on long missions. And here is Mission Specialist 2, Jeremy Hansen, from the Canadian Space Agency. He is a CF-18 fighter pilot, a geologist. But there is something about Hansen's inclusion on this mission that is quietly extraordinary. Artemis 2 is his first spaceflight. He has never been to space before. He is leaving the planet for the first time, and he is going straight to the moon. Not to low Earth orbit, not to the ISS, to the moon. This is mind-boggling. He will be the first Canadian to travel beyond low Earth orbit, the first Canadian to see the far side of the moon with his own eyes, and he is doing it as a rookie. Think for a moment what that means. Hansen has trained for years. He has spent time in simulators, in underwater analogs, in centrifuges that press 6 times his body weight onto his chest. But until April 1st, 2026, he had never felt a launch. He had never experienced microgravity. He had never looked out a window and seen the curve of the Earth. His first experience of all of this is happening on a mission that will take him farther away than 99.999% of all humans who have ever lived. This is like taking a Formula 1 car for your driver's license test. Hansen is starting from zero on humanity's greatest adventure, and his eyes will allow us to see this journey from a fresh, unfiltered perspective. He represents all of us, every one of us, going to the moon for the first time. These 4 people are not a randomly selected group. Their selection tells a story of deliberate balance. 2 pilots, 2 mission specialists, 3 Americans, 1 Canadian, 3 veterans, 1 rookie, 2 military test pilots, 1 engineer scientist, 1 geologist fighter pilot. This shows how seriously NASA takes crew compatibility. Knowing how it can jeopardize a mission, an incompatible crew can endanger a mission. This quartet has been training together for over 3 years. In the enclosed space of Orion, about the volume of a minivan, 4 adults will live, work, eat, and sleep for 10 days. There is no privacy. There is no separate room. This is the ultimate test of long-term isolation and interpersonal dynamics. These 4 people are not just a crew. They are the subjects of a test. They are not just testing a spacecraft. They are testing the limits of human endurance. And now, they are heading towards those limits, into the silence of deep space. Because it's here, the deepest, sheer, most isolated, and most transformative moment of the journey is approaching. 128 consecutive days in space. This is the record for the longest single spaceflight ever made by a woman. It is an incredible test of endurance, and in October 2019, she and fellow astronaut Jessica Meir conducted the first all-female spacewalk in history. She knows what it means to live in a tin can, out in the void cheer for the better part of a year. Her long-duration experience is directly relevant to validating Orion's life support systems, because she feels in her bones when a spacecraft's environmental systems are working and when they are not. This is something you can't learn in simulators. It is an intuition gained only by living there. In that silence, for weeks, for months, Coke is not just an engineer. She is a living sensor for Orion, and her presence is vital to understanding whether this experimental vehicle can keep a crew safe on long missions. And here is Mission Specialist 2, Jeremy Hansen, from the Canadian Space Agency. He is a CF-18 fighter pilot, a geologist. But there is something about Hansen's inclusion on this mission that is quietly extraordinary. Artemis 2 is his first spaceflight. He has never been to space before. He is leaving the planet for the first time, and he is going straight to the moon. Not to low Earth orbit, not to the ISS, to the moon. This is mind-boggling. He will be the first Canadian to travel beyond low Earth orbit, the first Canadian to see the far side of the moon with his own eyes, and he is doing it as a rookie. Think for a moment what that means. Hansen has trained for years. He has spent time in simulators, in underwater analogs, in centrifuges that press 6 times his body weight onto his chest. But until April 1st, 2026, he had never felt a launch. He had never experienced microgravity. He had never looked out a window and seen the curve of the Earth. His first experience of all of this is happening on a mission that will take him farther away than 99.999% of all humans who have ever lived. This is like taking a Formula 1 car for your driver's license test. Hansen is starting from zero on humanity's greatest adventure, and his eyes will allow us to see this journey from a fresh, more unfiltered perspective. He represents all of us, every one of us, going to the moon for the first time. These 4 people are not a randomly selected group. Their selection tells a story of deliberate balance. 2 pilots, 2 mission specialists, 3 Americans, 1 Canadian, 3 veterans, 1 rookie, 2 military test pilots, 1 engineer scientist, 1 geologist fighter pilot. This shows how seriously NASA takes crew compatibility. Knowing how it can jeopardize a mission, an incompatible crew can endanger a mission. This quartet has been training together for over 3 years. In the enclosed space of Orion, about the volume of a minivan, 4 adults will live, work, eat, and sleep for 10 days. There is no privacy. There is no separate room. This is the ultimate test of long-term isolation and interpersonal dynamics. These 4 people are not just a crew. They are the subjects of a test. They are not just testing a spacecraft. They are testing the limits of human endurance. And now, they are heading towards those limits, into the silence of deep space. Because Ixia, the deepest, sheer, most isolated, and most transformative moment of the journey is approaching. And so, we descend now into the heart of that silence. On the 2nd day of the journey to the moon, something changes. It's not a single event you can point to. It's an awareness that slowly seeps in as the adrenaline of the launch subsides and the routine sets in. The Earth is smaller now. Visibly smaller. It no longer fills the window. It sits in the window, in a black frame, a blue and white marble, swirling with cloud patterns. If you held out your arm, you could cover it with your thumb. and the stars, which were washed out by Earth's reflected light on the first day, become sharper, more distinct. The Milky Way is no longer a faint smudge. It is a river of light stretching across the window with a clarity no one on the surface of the Earth can see. And the moon is growing, still distant, but it's no longer a dot, as it has become a disk. You can begin to make out the smudges of the dark Maria, the brighter cratered highlands. Inside, the crew is floating. Microgravity has been the baseline state since the TLI burn ended, and by the second or third day, the body begins to adapt. But the conversations with Houston are different, because at lunar distance, it takes a radio signal about 1.3 seconds to reach Earth. That means a round-trip delay of 2.6 seconds. Try having a conversation where every response comes almost 3 seconds after you finish speaking. The natural rhythm of human dialogue is completely broken. You say something, then you wait. The Apollo crews noted this disorientation. It's a subtle detail, but it accumulates over the days, and it makes the silence even deeper. And now comes the most epic moment. About 5 days after launch, around April 6th, 2026, Orion will reach the moon. And what happens next is the part that will stay with these 4 astronauts for the rest of their lives. The spacecraft is approaching the moon from behind. It is traveling on a trajectory that will carry it to within about 7,400 kilometers of the surface. This means they will be closer to the moon than at any other point in the mission. So close they will be able to see individual craters. The surface will fill the lower half of their field of view, and this is the far side of the moon, the hemisphere that never faces Earth. As Orion passes behind the moon, the spacecraft will lose all contact with our planet. This is not a technical failure. This is physics. The moon, 3,474 kilometers in diameter, acts like a wall of rock, physically blocking every radio frequency, every data link, every voice transmission between the spacecraft and Earth. For about 45 minutes, the Artemis II crew will be completely alone. No voice from Houston, no telemetry streaming back to mission control, no ability to call for help. Only 24 humans in history have experienced this. The crews of Apollo 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. As Wiseman, Glover, Koch, and Hansen pass behind the moon, they will become the 25th through 28th human beings to see the far side with their own eyes. It is a moment in history, a moment of absolute solitude, absolute silence, and absolute awe. And what they will see will look nothing like the moon you know. The near side of the moon, the one we see from Earth, is defined by those dark, smooth patches called Maria. These patches are the remnants of volcanic eruptions that filled giant impact basins billions of years ago. The Maria cover about 31% of the near side. But on the far side, there are almost none. The Maria cover about 1.6% of the far side surface. Instead, what you will see from orbit is an overwhelming, relentless landscape of craters. Craters on top of craters, layer upon layer of impacts accumulated over 4 billion years, unpaved by volcanic floods. The surface is brighter than the near side. The highland material is lighter in color than the dark volcanic basalt. And this gives the far side an alien quality that photographs cannot fully capture. From 7,000 kilometers up, it will look like a world that has been battered by everything the solar system can throw at it, and simply endured. But the most dominant feature is the South Pole Aitken Basin. This basin is 2,500 kilometers wide and roughly 8 to 12 kilometers deep. It is the largest confirmed impact structure in the entire solar system. About 4.3 billion years ago, something massive hit the moon and opened up a hole so catastrophic, it should have exposed the mantle beneath the crust. But here lies a great mystery. The expected mantle material is missing. Instead, beneath this basin, there is a massive anomaly of mass, detected by the gravity mapping of the Grail spacecraft. About 2.4 quintillion kilograms of metal are buried beneath the basin's surface. This might be the metallic core of the impactor that created the basin. But we don't know for sure. The Artemis 2 crew will fly over this basin. They will see it with their own eyes, and they will do so in complete silence from Earth. What does this 45-minute silence feel like? The Apollo crews left some clues. Michael Collins, who orbited the moon alone in the command module during Apollo 11, described the far side passes as the most profound moments of his life, not the loneliest, the most enlightening. Collins said that when the Earth was hidden and the surface of an ancient world flowed beneath him, the normal hierarchies of importance flattened out. What was left was something simpler. The universe is big, you are small, and you are seeing something almost no one has ever seen. Jim Lovell, SOS, who flew behind the moon twice on Apollo 8 and the ill-fated Apollo 13, described the far side silence not as frightening, but as absolute. He said the lack of communication with Earth didn't give a sense of abandonment. It gave a sense of concentration, as if the universe had cleared the room so you could pay attention to what was in front of you. For these 4 astronauts, this moment will take on a modern dimension. They have spent their entire lives connected. Phones, yurts, emails, social media, and for 45 minutes, all of that will stop. Because a world is in the way. In that silence, seeing craters that have not changed in billions of years, feeling the absence of Earth in every window, something changes. We don't yet know what that change will feel like for this crew. But Tia, every Apollo astronaut who experienced it said the same thing in different words. It changes you. You leave Earth as a pilot, Tia, an engineer, or a scientist. You come back as something else, as someone who has seen the overview effect. And now, we come to the most iconic moment of that overview. The beginning of the journey home. And then, as the orbit carries them around the curve of the far side, something begins to appear on the edge of the window. A sliver of blue, a crescent of light against the grey lunar horizon. Earth is rising. And in that moment, that special, unrepeatable moment, you see what only a handful of humans have ever seen. Your planet, your home, emerging from behind another world. This is the Earthrise moment. The crew of Apollo 8 saw and captured it for the first time on Christmas Eve in 1968. That photograph has been called the most influential environmental photograph in history. It was the moment humanity first saw itself from the outside. One world, without borders, floating in an infinite void. In 2 days, the Artemis 2 crew will see the same thing. The same view, seen with different eyes 54 years later. And in that moment, it will render all the political debates, all the budget fights, all the technical risks meaningless. Because that moment is a reminder of why we are here. That moment is a reminder of why we take these incredible risks and why we embark on these impossible journeys. But now, it is time to move from the beauty of that moment to the most dangerous part of the journey. Because coming home is harder than going to the moon, and the journey home is the final test that will determine whether this mission is a success. And now we ask ourselves, all this politics, all this engineering, all these risks, what for? What does this brief moment in lunar orbit, this journey awaited for 54 years, tell us? Now is the time to stop and think, the time to slow the pace and descend into the philosophical depth of this journey. Because Artemis II is not just a mission of metal and fuel. It is a mirror that makes humanity re-ask the most fundamental questions about its place in the universe. What we see in that mirror is both a tragic loneliness and an incredible connection. And this duality, this paradox, lies at the very heart of what it means to be human. Let us now return to that moment of Earthrise and listen to what that moment whispers to us about our own existence. Because the answers are hidden not in the noise of rocket engines, but in that deep and absolute silence. The first and most striking contrast is the paradox of distance and proximity. On one hand, there is the place where the crew is, 250,000 miles from Earth. This is a distance so vast that it's almost impossible for our minds to grasp. From that distance, everything you know, every person you love, every moment you've lived, is nothing more than a pale blue dot that can be hidden behind your thumb. This is the ultimate cosmic isolation. Even light takes 1.3 seconds to reach you. It is a brutal reminder of how vast the universe is and how small we are. And seen from that distance, all of human history appears as an insignificant tremor on the surface of that tiny, fragile sphere. This is the tragic truth. We are a tiny raft adrift on a vast ocean, and we will never fully know how deep that ocean is, how dark it is, and how far its shores are. This is humanity's helplessness in the face of the universe. But then, at the same time, there is an incredible proximity created by that distance. Because those 4 astronauts, in their isolation, are more connected to each other and to us on Earth than they have ever been. Their survival depends on the collective effort of hundreds of people in Houston, on millions of hours of training, and on decades of accumulated knowledge. They are alone. But they are also at the pinnacle of one of humanity's greatest collaborative projects. But you are also in this paradox. You too are stuck on this small planet with 7 billion other people. But at the same time, you are connected to those people by invisible networks, a common destiny, a shared home. The Artemis II crew is experiencing the extreme end of this truth. They represent both humanity's cosmic loneliness and that incredible power of our interconnectedness, but it's all at once. The second contrast is between the past and the future. On one hand, there is what Artemis II represents, the ghosts of the past. This mission is, in every aspect, a mission inherited from Apollo. The launch pad is the same. The basic orbital mechanics are the same. Even the rocket itself is built with parts left over from the 30-year-old Space Shuttle program. This is an act of nostalgia. It is an attempt to recapture something we lost in 1972. It is a modern way of saying, we used to be able to do this. This is the tragic weight of the past. We have advanced so far that we can only move forward by looking back. We are stuck in the shadow of our own technological history. Instead of charting a new path, we are trying to follow the footsteps of our fathers and grandfathers. This is an admission of a kind of defeat. It's like admitting that our brightest days are behind us and that we are now just trying to recreate echoes of those days. But then, within this past-obsessed architecture, there are the seeds of the future, because the crew flying on Artemis II represents a future that Apollo could not even have imagined. Among them are a woman, a black man, and a Canadian, since they show that space exploration is no longer the project of just one nation or one gender. They are the harbingers of a more inclusive, more collaborative future for humanity. They show that we are moving beyond Apollo's flag-planting mentality and towards a discovering together mentality. You are also a part of this contrast. You too are a product of your own past, Chaksich, of the history you inherited from your family and culture. But, at the same time, with the choices you make every day, you are shaping your own future and the future of those around you. Artemis II reminds us of this. We cannot escape the past, but we don't have to be defined by it. We can learn from it, honor it, and then, standing on its shoulders, reach for a future no one has ever seen before. The third and perhaps most personal contrast is between risk and safety. Artemis II is one of the most cautious and risk-averse missions in the history of human spaceflight. Against Apollo's 1 in 10 loss probability, Artemis flies with a safety target of 1 in 30. Every system is redundant. Every procedure has been tested repeatedly. Every decision has been filtered through the question, what if it goes wrong? This is the tragic legacy of Challenger and Columbia. Those two disasters, which cost the lives of 14 astronauts, instilled a fear and caution into NASA's DNA. No risk is taken anymore. No warning is ignored anymore. This is tragically logical. Because protecting the sanctity of human life is the most fundamental duty of any institution, and the pain of those 14 families should never be forgotten. This is the price of safety, a price of slowness, achastus, bureaucracy, and sometimes the sacrifice of progress itself. But then, in the midst of this overwhelming safety net, an incredible risk is being taken. 4 people are sitting inside a capsule with a heat shield that has known flaws. They will perform a re-entry maneuver that has never been tested at this speed with humans on board. They are the pioneers of a program that relies on a wild plan to build a gas station in orbit. This is the ultimate risk. This is the acceptance of that fundamental truth inherent in exploration. It can never be 100% safe. At some point, when all the analyses are done, when all the simulations are complete, someone has to sit on top of a rocket and push the button. This is the fundamental courage that drives human progress. It is that willingness to step into the unknown. You too live this contrast every day. When you get in your car every morning, you take a small but real risk. But at the same time, you manage that risk by wearing your seatbelt and following the rules. Artemis II is a cosmic version of this balancing act. It reminds us of both the wisdom of being cautious and the necessity of being brave. Because progress is born from the tense dance between these two. These contrasts, these paradoxes, are not just cold analyses. They are the very essence of what it means to be human. We are beings who are both tragically small and miraculously great. We are both chained to our past and possess the power to shape our future. We are both cowardly cautious and wildly brave. Artemis II contains all these contradictions in a single mission. It is a mirror of humanity. And what we see in that mirror is a complex, contradictory, but ultimately hopeful picture. But sexy within this picture lies a deeper, more fundamental question. Why is all this effort, all this risk, all this money worth it? Why are we spending $90 billion just to take a trip around the moon and come back? The answer to this question lies beyond politics and economics, in the deepest motivations of the human spirit. And to understand these motivations, we must now return to the most fundamental question of the story. And so, we now return to that most fundamental question. Why? The answer lies in another deep contrast, that eternal tension between survival and exploration. On one hand, there is the existence of the program itself. Artemis is a program designed to survive. It is built to endure from one presidential term to the next, from one budget cycle to the next. Its expensive, race, slow, as, and complex structure is not a bug. It's a feature. Because this structure feeds 30,000 jobs spread across 44 states. This is a life support system that makes the rocket politically durable. Each $4.1 billion launch of the SLS is not just the cost of a rocket, but also the price of the political coalition that keeps the program alive. This is the tragic truth of exploration. To realize humanity's greatest dreams, we often have to compromise with the most mundane and worldly concerns, namely politics and economics. It is our dreams. Chained to the brutal reality of budget spreadsheets and election cycles, their progress is not bought with inspiring speeches, but with tedious negotiations in committee meetings. But then, inside this politically engineered machine, the purest impulse of the human spirit continues to burn: the desire to explore. Those 4 astronauts are not there for a paycheck or the next election. They are there because something is beyond the horizon, because there is an allure to the unknown, because the question, what's out there, is the fundamental question that drove our species out of the African savannas and to every corner of the planet. Artemis may be a jobs program, but it is also a monument to human curiosity. The SLS may be a political compromise, but it is also the only vehicle that can carry us beyond the confines of our home. This is the beautiful truth of exploration. Even within the most corrupt, most bureaucratic systems, that pure spark of curiosity somehow manages to survive. That spark pushes people to risk their lives, leave their families behind, and travel 250,000 miles away from everything they know. You carry this contrast within yourself as well. You too fight the mundane struggle for survival every day, paying your bills, fulfilling your responsibilities. But at the same time, there is a part of you somewhere inside that longs for more, the desire to learn something new, to see a new place, to go beyond your own personal horizon. Artemis is the combination of these 2 impulses on a cosmic scale. It is both a survival machine and an exploration vehicle. And this duality is what makes it both so frustrating and so inspiring. And this brings us to one final contrast: the meaning of failure and the definition of success. On one hand, there is the possibility that this mission could fail. But what does failure mean? Artemis 2 will not land on the moon. This is a known fact from the very beginning. In that sense, can it be seen as a failure? Critics of the program will say that spending $90 billion to repeat only a fraction of what we did 54 years ago is no victory. They will point to the unsustainable cost of the SLS, or Honkocht, the existence of more innovative alternatives like Starship, and the slow pace of the program. This is a tragically narrow definition of success. It is a perspective that says victory can only be declared when the ultimate goal is reached. According to this view, every step is a failure unless the summit is reached. This is the brutal logic of a results-oriented world, a logic that ignores the value of the journey itself. But then, there is a very different, or much deeper definition of success. According to this definition, Artemis II is already a success, because it has encouraged people to look at the moon again, because it has reminded a generation that reaching for the stars is still possible, because by carrying a woman, a black man, and a Canadian to humanity's farthest point, it has forever changed our perception of who exploration belongs to. This is the beautiful truth of success. Success is not just the destination. Success is the journey itself. Success is the awe in the eyes of those 4 astronauts. Success is that moment they see the Earth rise over the lunar horizon. Success is millions of people holding their breath to watch that launch, and for a moment, connecting to something beyond their daily worries, something bigger, a shared dream of humanity. You are part of this definition too. Do you measure your successes in life only by the goals you reach, or by what you learned while reaching those goals? The moments you grew, the relationships you built along the way? Artemis II asks us this. If we never land on the moon again, would this journey still have been worthwhile? The answer depends on how you define success, but perhaps the real success is daring to ask that question. After learning this whole story, how do you feel? On one hand, it's easy to feel a sense of cynicism and frustration at the political nature of this program, its incredible cost, and its slow pace. It's understandable to feel anger at a $4.1 billion rocket that can't do a job that was done cheaper and more efficiently 54 years ago. This is to think that taxpayer money has been wasted, that potential has been squandered. This is to see the tragic truth. But, on the other hand, it is also possible to feel a sense of admiration and hope for the 4 people sitting on that rocket, for their courage, their dedication, and what they represent. It is also possible to feel that the Earthrise moment, beyond all the politics and money, carries a deep meaning for the human spirit. This is to see the beautiful truth. And the fact is, both are true. Both are part of the reality. Artemis is both a political survival machine and a symbol of humanity's noblest aspirations. And being able to accept both these truths at the same time is the key to truly understanding this complex story. We are now approaching the end of the journey. We know now that the answer to why Artemis II is not landing on the moon is not a simple technical glitch. This answer is a complex tapestry of politics, arches history, our perception of risk, and human nature itself. The road to the moon is paved not just with rockets and orbits, but also with compromises, disappointments, and an unshakable hope. Those 4 astronauts are now coming home. They didn't just take a trip around the moon. They took a trip around humanity itself, and they held up a mirror to us. A mirror that is both unsettling and inspiring. Their journey is almost over. But our journey, the journey of deciding what to do with this knowledge, is just beginning. And now, they are preparing for that final, most dangerous phase, the return home. Because returning from the moon is much harder than going there. And this final obstacle will be the decider of everything. On this journey, we have seen humanity struggle to reach the moon, but I haven't told you the most terrifying truth. The rest of the universe is completely silent. There are trillions of planets, but not a single intelligent signal. Nothing. Why? On our next journey, we will confront the Fermi paradox and the chilling possibility of the Great Filter. Are you ready for that silence?